Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone joining us tonight for our Get Marathon Going session. You guys have already raised, I just checked before we came on the call, so there's over £119,000 has been raised by you guys for Motor Neurone Disease Association, which is awesome. So go team, fundraising is going really well. But I guess with 16 weeks to go before the big day, now people are really thinking about training. So here we are, and I guess I'll hand over to Liz.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm here really to settle your nerves about what lies ahead for you, expel any myths that you may have heard about how to train for a marathon, and set you on the right tracks, because between now and the marathon day is probably the toughest part of your journey. Making the start line, once you're there, you've got a huge probability, like 98% of finishing the event. So between now and then, you need to stay in one piece, bank some training, and get on the start line healthy and fit and confident. So hopefully this is what the next half an hour of talking will put your mind at ease a little bit. I just want you to have a little think before I start about what frightens you the most about the marathon. And if you've got the chat, you can either put it in the chat or you can just hold it in your head. And if I don't answer that question throughout the presentation, you can ask it at the end. But what most frightens you about doing the marathon? Just a little think there. Okay, so who am I to be advising you? Well, I'm Liz. I'm a mum of 3. My husband is also the London Marathon coach. You might have seen him. And I've coached runners of all abilities, right from total beginners up to Paralympians and kind of quite fast, speedy runners. I've also run the London Marathon 6 times as an elite athlete, and I've competed as part of the Massfield as well. So I was on the start line next to the Rhinos and a load the fancy dress in kind of the 4:45 arena. And the picture on this slide is of me kind of, posing for a photograph, which I would have never have done as an elite athlete. But we had a great time running with the masses, and it was a completely different viewpoint. So I know what you're going to experience on race day. And so if you have any questions about that towards the end of the presentation, you can ask me. So today we're going to talk about what you need to do on your marathon and equip you with that. So today I need you to leave feeling like you have the confidence to complete the distance. And I think it's normal to worry about running the distance. I know the very first time I did a marathon, even as an elite athlete, I was extremely anxious about going the distance. And of course I was, gunning for a specific time. So it's perfectly normal for anyone to worry about doing the distance. Knowing what training you need to bank in the next few months, and what is the minimum you need to do in order to get around your marathon. And if you're kind of quite keen and want to run faster, we can give you some tips as well. I want you to be motivated. I want you to be excited. You are doing the London Marathon. It's one of the most amazing events on the planet. I've done lots of marathons around the world, and the London Marathon is awesome. The crowds are incredible. Just the atmosphere and the whole build-up is brilliant. And the London Marathon team are particularly great at putting on a really super event. So it is going to be a fantastic day. And in your mind, I just want you to kind of keep in mind that you're going to visualize running across that finish line, and that will keep you going. So running down the mall, crossing that finish line and being ecstatic. And if you're more experienced, you've done marathons, I'll obviously offer some tips for you as well to get a little bit faster and what that can look like. So it's brilliant, the marathon, and I'm an advocate for it, but also I know many runners that have done their first marathon and are buzzing about it. So it requires commitment. You've got to commit to your training plan. You've got to be motivated to get out and train. You need patience at times. You know, you've got to not commit to too much too soon and go crazy. You need to be patient with the training, allow it to develop over the next few weeks, and be patient with your fitness and don't worry about it. There's of course going to be change, challenge, and at times you'll need courage. And the marathon journey can be tough at times. I'm not going to lie, there will be days when you hate running. There'll be days that you love running, and that is perfectly normal. So it can be very, very rewarding, and you'll find it can make a difference to your life as well as those that you're raising money for, which is going to be which is an awesome charity in itself. I've said this, you know, making the start line is your toughest journey, and if you nail that, 98% of the people actually finish the London Marathon. So why not you? Today, I need to kind of dispel any myths that you might have heard, and making the start line feel very achievable for you. So why do we train? Well, it does make race day easier. So getting fitter and increasing your ability to run for further is going to make approaching race day much easier. You're going to enjoy it much more. You're less likely to get injured doing the event if you do the training itself. So I know lots of people worry about getting hurt during the event, but if you do the training, that's less likely to happen. Trained runners, they're more likely to run consistent pace and complete the marathon in a faster time for them. So what that means is you're less likely to slow down significantly towards the end. Most people slow down in the marathon. They start off, and it's a natural cause that, you know, we get fatigued and we slow down. But the fitter you are, the less you will slow down. And the most successful marathoners run more evenly across, so they run closer to their potential by running even pace throughout the entire event. If you train your body, it gives you the confidence mentally as well that you can go the distance. So actually doing the training gives you mental confidence in your ability to do the event itself. So training is a must, really. It's probably the least painful way to do the marathon. And if you want to enjoy it, you need to definitely bank some training. So you need to make some choices. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to get out of the London Marathon? What is your London Marathon training budget? So this is the time that you can allocate to the marathon training itself. And this is something, an area that you do not want to overcommit on. You might be very excited at the moment. Yeah, I can train 5 times a week, but can you train 5 times a week, week after week, month after month? And can you actually have a life outside of training for your marathon? You might have different elements of your life that you still need to squeeze into your week. So you still may have a family, and you still may have a job. You know, you've got other things that you need to fit in. So don't overcommit to the training. You're slightly better to undercommit and be consistent with your training week after week, month after month. How are you going to do this training? You know, you're going to need to get a plan. When are you going to do it? And what is your motivation? I know, you know, you're all running for the charity, which is a huge motivator in itself. And you may also have some other motivators that you can keep you going and keeping you going each day. So aspirations. Do you want to just get round? Do you want to run a specific time, run faster than you've ever done before, have fun, do it in fancy dress, run with a group or a friend? Whatever that is, you need to have an aspiration. Let's have a little think about what your aspiration is. Oh, sorry. Training budget. how much time do you realistically have? So no kind of, oh yeah, I can do that, I can commit to that plan, it's 6 days a week. What can you realistically commit to and keep to? How much training have you done before? If you've never trained for a marathon before, it's not realistic for you to think, well, I've done no running before and now I'm going to run 5 times a week. You need to ease yourself in. So running 3 times a week is a minimum requirement for a marathon. So if you do 3 runs a week and you build one of those runs into a long run, one of those into a short, steady run, and you might, the other one, a medium time run, you will get round the marathon. So that is your minimum spend, and that will definitely get you fit enough to do the marathon event. If you want to commit a little bit more time, you're used to having regular exercise, you're used to doing a bit more running, you might commit to more. Don't overcommit. I will tell you this 100 times so it goes in. And you do have to juggle it with the rest of your life. You need to make sure that you've got recovery, and remember, non-running days are the days where you adapt to the training that you're doing. So don't worry about not having, having days where you don't exercise as well, especially if you're, running further than you ever have before. You need days where you can recover. And getting support from people around you. So if you live in a house with lots of family, putting your training plan on the fridge or somewhere where everyone can see it, it means, they can see what you're doing today. They can support you on that journey. Their expectations for you to go out for a run are there. They can see what you're doing. If they can see you've got a 20-mile run at the weekend, they're like, I know you've got to do a 20-mile run, so we won't do this today. So being transparent with what you're trying to do and achieve, if you're living with a family, can be really helpful. You might get them on board with your training. You might get people coming out, your friends or family coming out with you on the bike and handing you drinks and keeping you company, or joining you for sections of the run, or maybe driving around a loop and handing out a drink out the window. You're going to be training in the summer, so you will need to have some sort of support around you and keeping hydrated for sure. So yeah, think about how that can work and maybe speak to those people, how you'd like them to support you. Your training. So what can you expect to be doing between now and race day? So running regularly, 3 times a week minimum. Plan in your rest and recovery. So training for a marathon doesn't have to be like a linear line from kind of zero training right up to marathon race day and you just progress every single week. You may take a week back where you do less and then you go again. So a good training plan will have weeks planned in where you step back a little bit. And you may, every weekend may not progress your long run. You might have a weekend where you go backwards and you do less miles. And if a plan doesn't do that, you can do it. You can change the plan to work for you. And you can also tie in those lesser training weeks or training weekends with an event like a family event, like a wedding or a holiday. So you can back off and tick over, especially if you've gone somewhere nice and you want to, maybe it's too hot on holiday. You can do less running for 1 week and it will not affect your overall fitness. And you can use it as an active recovery week. So that is perfectly acceptable. You need to be consistent. So the way to get fit for a marathon is not by doing one-off mega training weeks. It's by doing little and often, week after week, month after month. That's what will bring about your fitness. People often get really hung up on the long run and running 26 miles. It's not necessary because it's the accumulation of training week after week that brings about fitness for your marathon. Okay, my buttons. That's it. So choosing a training plan. There are loads out there. Your charity may have given you some, but there are lots of them from varying in kind of how they tackle the training for the marathon. look at a couple of plans and choose one that excites you, one that you feel you can make work for your life. And you need to make sure that it fits into your life. You're not trying to make your life fit in with the plan. So you can move the days around to work, ensuring that you have some recovery days in between the training days, of course, but make sure you make the plan work for you. Make it fit with your life and the training budget, how, the training time that you want to commit to it. Don't choose a plan that overcommits for you. Like I said, don't overcommit. Consistency is key. If anything, slightly undercommit, and then you're able to fulfill the requirements of the plan. You need to consider things like training frequency, training intensity. So some plans will have things like intervals or hill training, some faster sections of running. Is that something you want in a plan? And things like that are great for fitness return rather than just going for another easy run. They can add some variety and make it more interesting. And if you want to chase a specific time, then including things like intervals and hill training and things like that can actually help with being able to run faster for the marathon distance as well. If you're looking at running faster, does the training plan offer you the right variety of training and the right balance of training for you? What have you done before? Is it a slight increase on what you've done before? So all of these things you will need to consider in choosing a plan. So terminology can sometimes baffle people, especially if you're not used to this regular training and marathon training. So easy running, it should feel easy. Now, if running doesn't feel easy right now because you're just starting out, that's perfectly normal. And easy running at the moment for you might be walking. But easy running is just a case of really dialing down and running so you're able to hold a full conversation, even if it feels like you're pitter-patting on the spot. You can really dial down that running so you're able to talk to people. Steady running is a slight increase in this, but again, you're still able to hold a conversation. And you might do the bulk of your running at easy and steady paced running, especially if you're a beginner. Tempo and threshold, if you want to get good returns in terms of your fitness, so if you've got a half an hour slot, instead of doing an easy 30-minute run, doing some pace change and some faster running will actually give you a fitness boost. And it's really something to consider. So threshold is kind of a controlled discomfort. So you're running fast, but not flat out. And you can maybe say 2 or 3 words before you need to breathe in. And doing threshold running, you might only start for very small bursts initially until you get fitter and you get more used to it. And then you can run faster for longer. So some training plans may include some of those, and they should progress you over the weeks so you're able to run at those intensities. Fast running, sprints, a flat out run for up to a minute, it's not really necessary for marathon training unless you're uber elite or maybe a sub 3:30 runner. But running super fast also carries its own injury risks. And at this time, we want to avoid as many injuries as we can. So avoid fast running. You will get enough from the other types of running. Intervals, you may see these on a plan. This is kind of quite prescribed, that it's running for a set amount of time, a bit faster with a set recovery. And these, for example, in an interval session might look like 5 times 2 minutes with 2 minutes jog recovery. You can have pyramid intervals where you go 1 minute faster, 1 minute recovery, 2 minutes faster, 1 minute recovery, 3 minutes faster, 1 minute recovery, and then you might go back down again. So intervals can vary in distance and length, and they typically have a walk or a jog recovery. A fartlek is a Swedish term for speed play. You may have heard of it. It's a much looser term. And you might do this on a run. So instead of your regular 4-mile run, you set out on that. And then you might see a tree in the distance. You think, actually, I'm just going to pick up the pace to that next tree. and then follow it with a recovery, a walk or a jog, until you feel your breathing coming under control again. And then once you feel ready, you'll pick another landmark in the distance and run a little bit faster to it. And that's a really nice way of breaking up one of your regular runs with a little bit of speed play. And again, it's really good for fitness return. So if your plan doesn't have that in it, you could play around with a little bit of fartlek during some of your training runs as you get more confident. So the long run, this is probably the most important training element in your plan, because the London Marathon is a long run. Okay, so if you do none of your other runs that week because life just took over, make sure you try and bank the long run. These typically build each week. Like I said, they can step back. Step back some weeks. So you can have recovery weeks before you build again. If you're quite keen, you might build in some marathon pace sections into your run, so you become familiar with what marathon pace feels like. And that's if you know what your marathon pace is. So if you're aiming for a specific time, for example, if you're aiming for a 4-hour marathon, then your marathon pace is about 9-minute miling. So if you can break that down, you may have absolutely no idea what your marathon pace is right now. And that might become more apparent if you do a half marathon. But you might have no idea right now what that looks like. Your longest run on a good training plan should be 3 or 4 weeks out from race day. And this is to allow you to recover before the race, so you feel really fresh and ready to race and run the distance on the 2nd of October. And you have to trust the process. Training for a marathon is like no other event, because you need to bank in some miles, push some boundaries, but then you also need to recover from that in the taper, that where you reduce your training loads going into the race, so you feel really refreshed and up for doing the distance. Now, the long run is awesome for also practicing all your race day routines, like your nutrition, your kit, and your pace. So make sure you get your charity vests, you've tried it on, make sure it doesn't rub, you got the fit right before race day. Make sure you know what works for you before you go out running. How long do you need to leave before you go out for your run? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Is it 3.5 hours? What are you going to fuel your long runs with? So you may choose some sports things like sports gels, jelly shots, jelly babies, Marmite sandwiches. You know, what is going to fuel your marathon? Although many of us could get to 20 miles without any fuel, you're really fueling for these last 6 miles. So it's key that you practice taking on something when you're running. Just like you're training for the marathon, you also need to train to fuel whilst you're running. So starting that once the runs get over an hour and a half can be really useful for race day. And also, what tastes great in your kitchen doesn't taste quite so great when you're kind of 10 miles into a run. So it's really important you see what works for you. And you know, if you're taking a gel, you just need to take it little and often. So you don't need to eat the entire gel in one hit. That's more likely to give you a stitch and some stomach discomfort. So how you take the fuel when you're running is really important as well. And it's really key you don't overhydrate. You hydrate optimally, so your urine is clear prior to you going out training. You know, guzzling liters and liters of water is not, you know, is very dangerous. So making sure you take on a little bit of water, little and often, and use thirst as a gauge as well. Electrolytes can be quite helpful as well. Training through the summer months, you know, you're going to be sweating quite a bit more than you would in the winter. So replacing those salts is going to be quite important. Okay, so there are times when you shouldn't be running, and it's understanding the difference between, you know, pain, good pain and bad pain. So there's pain where you go out for a run, you feel a sharp pain, you probably need to stop immediately, get a lift home, walk home, and rest that injury, especially if it's still very sore whilst you're walking around. And that might require, you know, a week of no running, a week to 2 weeks of no running while it heals, and also seeking some good, you know, sports physio advice. You're far better to rest an injury straight away than try and train through it. And you can cross train. So if you can't run, you can jump on a bike, especially if it doesn't hurt. You can swim, anything that is going to work your cardiovascular. You can still do your training plan, but maybe on the stepper or bike, if you have access to one. There is pain that is, you know, when you wake up, it's stiffness and a bit tender, but then once you get running, it eases off. That pain is manageable and is something you can train on. Illness, never train when you're ill, especially if you have a temperature. If you have a very light head cold, that's fine, but if you have a sore throat, anything from the neck down, or a chesty cough, you need to rest and make sure you get well before you resume your running again. You know, there's going to be days when you are going to be tired. That is normal. You know, especially the day after a long run. You know, I used to feel exhausted the day after I'd done some of my long runs, and then trying to run again was, you know, more of a shuffle than running. So expect some fatigue, but if you're tired day after day, then maybe go and seek some advice from your doctor. You shouldn't feel tired every day. Maybe you've overcommitted. You need to adjust your plan. Be flexible and listen to your body. So what type of fatigue is it? And if you're really busy, some weeks we get dumped on, things happen in our lives where it's an extra pressure to your week. And sometimes your run might have to be dropped because there are more important things that take over. And that happens sometimes. You know, if I've spent 3 hours in A&E with the son, it might mean my run needs to drop. So there are things that crop up. So don't beat yourself up if you miss a training run here and there. In the bigger scale of things, it's not going to make that much of a difference. You know, if you're sitting on the sofa eating crisps all day long and missing your run, then, you know, maybe you're not going to that's not quite what I mean, but too busy eating crisps isn't an excuse. But, you know, if there's a genuine reason and it's all just a bit too much, then give yourself a break. It's not the end of the world. So what do the next 4 months look like for you? So right now, you should be building a routine where you're getting used to going out for your exercise, whether that's you're walking right now or whether you're running. You need to have that routine built into your schedule on a week by week basis. So getting that routine now is really, really important. So if you haven't started already, then make sure that's something you're looking to do over the next week or two. July is about getting into your runs, learning how to pace yourself and being consistent. So week after week, even if you think you can train more, don't. Just trust the process. Don't get too excited. August is when you're going to start building those long runs, and you're really going to start feeling kind of the training is taking its toll a little bit. So you will feel occasionally fatigued, and you will really notice that you're doing some training, but also your fitness will start to improve in August as well, especially towards the back end of August, because you'll have running between, you know, nearly 6 to 8 weeks later, you'll start to notice some fitness coming through. And this is when you'll need to start thinking about your nutrition and your hydration and how you're going to carry that as well. So there's many fuel belts out on the market. There's kind of vests that you can carry your fuel in, your drinks and your kind of gels or whatever you're going to take on your runs. Another way, before we things like that existed back in my day, I used to measure a route that went past my front door, like a 4-mile route, and I put out on the wall outside, I put some drinks on the wall and some gels, and I used to just run past my door every 4 miles, pick up a drink and a gel, put it back down and then keep going. So it depends what kind of floats your boat in terms of motivation. If you run past your door, you're likely to go in the front door on the first lap. if that's the case, you probably need a more of a point-to-point run. But if you can tolerate running past your front door every 4 miles, then it can be a really good thing to do, and people can come out and support you as well on each lap. So I know before I used to drive my car, measure a route and drop out drinks bottles on the route, and then the following week I'd go out and pick up the old drinks bottles and drop out new drinks bottles. So there's lots of ways of putting the fuel out on your runs, but these days it's much easier to carry it and take it with you, or get someone else to come with you and carry it for you. So there's many ways of doing it. You just need to be a bit creative about how you go about taking your fuel and hydration with you. September, you need to practice some target marathon like pace, and racing is really important for practicing all those kind of pre-race routines like eating, getting used to nerves, getting used to arriving at an event, and all that entails. So you might enter a half marathon, a 10 miler, a local 5 mile race, even a park run. Just get out there and get some racing under your belt, so you start to understand what you need to do for marathon race day. It can be really useful kind of dress rehearsal for you. So there's lots of information there. I'm just going to whiz through and make sure that I've answered all your questions. Lots of people are concerned about running out of energy and hitting the wall. So this is all to do with getting your training done. If you don't get the taper right, the fueling right, the hydration right, and your pacing right, then that's when the wall can exist. So understanding your fitness and what pace to run your marathon at is really important. And therefore doing a race like a 10 mile or a half marathon is a really good indicator of what you're potentially going to race. So if you do a half marathon, for example, you double it and add about 10 to 12% of the time. And that will give you an estimation of what you're capable of. So it's really important that you learn to pace it, and it should feel easy. The first up to 20 miles, you know, you should feel very in control of your pace. If you're breathing very hard at 3 miles, you've gone out way too fast. So the marathon has to feel almost too easy at the beginning. And then the last, as you start to progress through the second half of the race, yes, it does get harder, even though you're running the same pace, because it's a gradual onset of fatigue. But if you train right, that fatigue is less. And if you fuel right, that fatigue is less. So hitting the wall is avoidable. It's just making sure that you tick all those boxes in training, you know, making sure you fuel well, you hydrate well, you train well, and pace your race well. So hopefully that's answered. Stomach issues are really common for lots of runners. Imodium instants are brilliant. I used to use them a lot as an athlete, and whilst they don't bung you up, they're very good at calming your stomach. So I used to take those about 50 minutes before I ran, and they can be really helpful for just giving you peace of mind that you're going to be okay. So, you know, nerves and, you know, needing to go to the toilet is very common before a race, and you might feel like you're spending far too long in the toilet queue, but that is absolutely normal. I think I went to the toilet probably 20 times before I raced. So yeah, that's not uncommon. I was stood in the toilet queue a lot. Yeah, fear of getting injured while training. If you're particularly injury prone and you recognize that of yourself, then, you know, combining a little bit of running with some cross training is a really good way of getting fit. So if you know that your body can't hack 3-4 times a week of running, then maybe jump on the bike, go to the gym, doing swimming, anything cardiovascular can support your running that you're doing. And just make sure that the training plan is not too much for your body to handle. So you can supplement the running with other forms of exercise to get your fitness. So if that's you, then it is possible to train in a different way by supplementing with cross training. We actually have loads of time to train for the marathon. My focus for the marathon was usually only 12 weeks. You've 16 weeks now. You've got so much time to train and get ready. So don't get too excited too soon. You might know some people that are going, oh, I'm doing 20 miles already. Well, by October, they'll be way too exhausted. Your training needs to be timed so you're fit for race day. So don't be doing too much right now. Okay, Chris Frost has asked me, there's a 20-mile race on Sheffield on the 4th of September. Personally, I'm totally against people racing a 20-mile race. If you're going to use it as a training run and you're very disciplined with your pace, then doing a 20-mile race can be really good, because there'll be drinks out, you can get to run with other people, and it's a month before, so it can be your long run a month before. But do not race it, because you will leave your marathon in the 20-mile race. It's a big mistake that lots of people do. So be disciplined with pace, maybe break the race down, like the first 10 miles really easy, the next 5 miles a little bit quicker, and then maybe the last 5 miles at target marathon pace. But be super disciplined if you're going to do a 20-mile race a month before the marathon. Any more? Logistics. It's really important, actually, getting your logistics right for race day. Someone has asked this, like booking your hotel. Are you going to book it at the start, or are you going to book it near the finish? Because they are poles apart. And when you finish, you're probably going to be less likely to want to travel. It depends if you're staying over the night after the race. A lot of people can be quite sore after running the marathon. So maybe getting someone to pick you up, drive you. I wouldn't recommend trying to drive a long distance after you've run a marathon, for sure. So yeah, John Wayne, the walk of John Wayne is quite common after a marathon. So yeah, planning your logistics is really important. Getting to the start line in plenty of time, so you can hand in your kit to the baggage trucks. You can spend a lot of time in the toilet queues. You wouldn't want to miss that. So getting to the start line, and if you're in the 4+ hour kind of category, you'll be stood on the start line probably between 15 and 25 minutes. So once the gun has gone for the super speedy guys, you've got time then to pop to the portaloos whilst the queues have dispersed. I didn't realize that at the time, and I was kind of queuing for the queues for ages, but there is time if you're towards the back of the field to go once the race has started. There's lots of questions here. I'm trying to scroll through. The average we should be doing for a long run right now, well, that really depends on how experienced you are. So, regular runners might be running for 90 minutes because they run all the time, and 90 minutes is quite a standard run for them. If you're new to running, you might only be running, 2 or 3 miles right now for your longest run, but you've got enough time now to build those long runs up. So even if you were adding, 1 to 2 miles a week, you're going to be running, enough distance before race day. So if 17 miles is your maximum long run, that is adequate, especially if you're a 6-hour marathon runner. You don't really want to be out for 6 hours on a training run. My suggestion for longest run is 3.5 hours or 20 miles, whichever is the least. So you will only ever be out for 3.5 hours or less for your longest training run. And that's kind of a benchmark guide from me. So a good plan would have that in especially if you're a 5 or 6 hour marathon runner. Running for that length of time is very fatiguing, and you don't want to be risking injury and illness. So yeah, don't overdo it. Remember, it's an accumulation of training that gets you fit, not the one-off long run. Does anyone want to ask any questions in person? You can take your microphones off and ask me a question direct if you want, if I've missed anything. Speak up, sorry, I didn't. Anyone? No, have I answered all your questions?
Liz, we have just had in the chat a question of your advice on how to avoid injuries in the first place.
Okay, I think the biggest thing is to go and get the right pair of trainers. So going to a reputable running store where they can make sure they fit you for the right shoe. You'll know it's a reputable running store because they will either put you on a treadmill, they will look at your running style, and then they will advise which trainers are correct for you. So that's probably your biggest investment, and probably a really wise investment. I do cringe when I see people running out in kind of their plimp soles on the street, and just wonder how long it's going to take before they get, you know, nastily injured. And, you know, going out running in your Converse shoes is, you know, not going to cut it when you're running for that long. So do get fitted, and you do need half a thumb's width at the end of your shoes, because the longer you run, your feet are more likely to swell. So you do need a bit of space. So you don't want really snug fitting trainers. So yes, going to a reputable running store, and then choosing a plan that progresses you from where you're at now. So what you don't want to do is take a massive leap to get onto the plan. So it needs to be very progressive, and you can do things like strength and conditioning to complement the training that you're doing. But again, it's a question of time. So running on softer surfaces, so not running on the roads all the time. So if you've got, you know, good cut fields, or you can run off road, that's going to lessen the impact on your bones and joints, and make you less injury prone. So hopefully that answers your question. I mean, there's no guarantee of, you know, not getting injured. We can't guarantee that, but there's many things that you can put in place, like getting the right shoes, not doing extremely fast speed work, not playing football on the weekends. So yeah, it's common sense a lot of the time, trying to be sensible about what you do.
There's been another question in terms of actually on race day. Do you know what the London Marathon provides besides water? Is it Gatorade or Powerade or anything like that?
It's usually Lucozade, but you do need to check the website because it's all sponsor based, and I haven't checked this year, but for the last however many years it's been Lucozade, and they often provide that something like 8 miles, 16 miles, and somewhere else. They provide water at mile 3 and every mile thereafter. So there's plenty of water on the course. And I think there is a point where they provide gels, Lucozade gels. But I used to take a gel every 5K, not the entire gel, but a small part of a gel every 5K with some water. And that, you know, was fueling me for those last 6 miles. So it is something you need to take on and think about, and maybe try Lucozade, see if it works for you, because if it works for you, it's on the course, you don't need to carry it. It's a win-win. But if you try it and, you know, it gives you stitch or gives you stomach distress, then you really need to experiment with something else that's going to work for you. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, hi Liz. I was just wondering if you've got any top tips for our runners now as we're going through the hot weather, through the summer, and do you recommend either running early morning or in the evening, and particularly for dealing with the hot weather, any top tips for the runners?
Yeah, so there's many things you can do. So jump in a cold shower before you go out for your run, it lowers your core and keeps you a bit cooler for longer. Again, like you said, running early or late, so you're not running in the midday heat. Choosing where you run, so running in forests or tree shaded areas can actually be a couple of degrees cooler than running in kind of the bright sunlight. So if you're able to go for a forest run or tree lined streets, that can really help. Obviously making sure that you're hydrated before you go out, and taking plenty of fluids with you. There might even be like a swim spot en route, so you might be able to jump in somewhere and cool down. You know, I'm lucky, I live along the beach, so you could always dive in the sea and jump back out. But if you know you've got some swim spots along a river, you know, I don't want you to be swept down a river and blame me that, you know, you've been washed away. So make sure it's a safe swim spot. But just things that could cool you down en route. And things to look out for are, you know, a super elevated heart rate. Watching your heart rate is really important when you're running in the heat, because your perceived exertion will be far higher. So although your pace may feel a lot slower, don't worry about your pace, because you're still getting the fitness returns. You will never run as fast in the heat as you will when it's not as warm. It can take 2 weeks to acclimatize to a new, you know, weather condition. So when you are training regularly, you may find that you are able to deal with the warmth a little better. But especially on those hot days, it might even be that you look at the weather forecast and see that on your long run day it's 30 degrees, and then the day after it's much cooler, or you know, you might be able to switch your run days around so you're not actually going out on the hottest day of the year. So trying to kind of forecast a little bit. I mean, it's not always accurate, but sometimes you can make that work for you as well. You know, wearing a cap, putting on plenty of sunscreen. So you know, the ones that bind with your skin, like the P20s, are really good because they don't come off when you sweat. And if once you've burnt your skin, you're less able to thermoregulate as well. So, you know, not getting sunburn, and wearing light colors rather than black can be really helpful when you're training. So, and definitely listening to your perceived exertion whilst running in the heat is extremely important. So just drop the pace down and be sensible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Liz.
No worries. Anyone else want to throw in a question?
I think you've covered everything that we've got in the chat here. So unless anyone else wants to unmute and speak up.
Well, thank you very much for being patient and listening to me. I wish you all the very best going forward. And if there's anyone that watches the video after the live session, if there's any questions you have, I'm very happy to answer them in an email. So you can send them to Helen or Julia and they can forward them on to me. I'm very happy to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Liz. That's been really informative, loads of great information. I think hopefully everyone is going away feeling a lot more confident and reassured that what they're doing and what they've got planned is the right thing. And yeah, we'll be seeing everyone at the start line and the finish line. So thank you. Don't forget everyone to join us we have a Facebook group, so there's loads of support there. You know, you can support each other, share your training plans when you go out for a run, or if it gets tough, you can lean on each other. And obviously everyone here at the fundraising team is here to help with any of your fundraising or training questions. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, good luck with the rest of your training.
You're welcome. Good luck, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.